Imagine stepping into a vibrant disco hall in the mid-1970s, the air thick with anticipation, and strobing lights dancing across mirrored walls. A sea of sequins and polyester pulses in time with the pounding beat, and the crowd moves as one electrified organism under a spell of pure rhythm. You can taste the excitement, smell the sweat, hear the roar of every anthem that shook the planet. At the heart of this frenzy was a voice, both commanding and ethereal, shifting from a soulful low register to an effortless falsetto that soared above the chaos. For decades, devoted fans believed that Bobby Farrell, with his wild dance moves and magnetic presence, was the man behind that voice. But what if everything you thought you knew was a lie? What if every sold-out show, every chart-topping hit carried a secret so explosive it would shatter the fantasy forever? This is the untold tale of Boney M, a glittering disco empire built on ambition, illusion, and heartbreak. In the winter of 1974, behind closed doors in a modest German studio, an ambitious producer named Frank Farian pressed record on a simple 4-track tape machine. Farian was a voice operator, a composer, and a man armed with unshakable confidence that he could craft hits the world would dance to. Alone in the booth, he laid down 2 vocal tracks, one a rich, rumbling baritone, the other a light, haunting falsetto. Layer upon layer of echo and reverb turned that rough demo into something magical. A strange new disco groove titled, "Baby Do You Want to Bump?" There was no band name, no photo shoot, only a catchy hook that demanded attention. When the record hit the airwaves in early 1975, it took off like wildfire in Belgium and the Netherlands, setting the stage for a worldwide explosion. Farian faced a dilemma. He had the voice, the songs, and the studio, but he lacked the charismatic faces to sell the illusion on television and tour circuits. So he assembled 4 performers: Liz Mitchell, Marcia Barrett, Maisie Williams, and Bobby Farrell. They were dancers, models, and singers with enough charisma to fill the biggest arenas. Yet, despite their talent and drive, Farian never intended for them to sing the vocals that fans adored. Instead, they would mime along to his studio recordings, dancing and lip-syncing while the real voice remained hidden. That deception marked the beginning of a modern pop phenomenon. One where frontmen and women would command the stage while another man's voice held the audience in thrall. From their first televised appearance, Boney M exploded. Clothes made of glitter and stretch fabric, synchronized choreography, and that unmistakable dual voice sound combined into a spectacle unlike anything before. Hit after hit follow it. Sunny, Ma Baker, Daddy Cool, each with chart positions that climbed into the top 10 around the world. Yet as Boney M's star ascended, a darker undercurrent emerged. The performers collected appearance fees, performance bonuses, and the fleeting adoration of fans, but not a share of the royalties. Farian, as the mastermind and sole vocalist, claimed all rights and royalties, funneling millions into his own pockets. Meanwhile, the dancers on stage had no idea how far his ambition would stretch. The contrast between Farian's private wealth and the group's public image grew sharp. In press photos, the 4 members beamed under stage lights. Off camera, they discovered contracts that paid them a flat fee, with no ownership of the recordings themselves. They saw the label checks, saw Farian's name at the top of royalty statements, and felt the sting of betrayal. On paper, they were employees hired to breathe life into an illusion. Behind the scenes, they were locked out of the music that made them famous. The scheme relied on their willingness to play the part, trusting that Farian would share enough of the success for them to live comfortably. But with every platinum record sold, the divide widened. By 1976, whispers of lip-syncing scandals had reached tabloids, but no one could assemble proof. Boney M performed live with flawless timing, dancing so fluidly that audiences never suspected the soundtrack wasn't coming from their own vocal cords. A technical glitch during a European concert nearly blew the cover when the backing track cut out and Bobby Farrell's lips kept moving. That awkward silence lasted a heartbeat, but it was enough to spark questions. Reporters leaned in for answers. Farian smoothed it over with technical excuses, and the show went on. Fans shrugged and grinned, and Boney M's legend marched forward. Even as their fame peaked, the storyline twisted further. Revers of Babylon became one of the biggest hits in British history, yet its origins lay in a Jamaican group's song based on Psalms. Farian credited himself and a co-writer, leaving the original artists unacknowledged. A lawsuit eventually forced corrected credits, but by then the millions had been counted. In studio, Farian sang every male line. On stage, he didn't appear at all. The frontman danced, lip-synced, and charmed crowds while he stayed in the shadows, a puppeteer grinning behind the curtain. The story of Boney M wasn't just about voices and records. It was about power, control, and the human cost of illusion. The performers who brought spark and energy to millions of lives found themselves trapped by contracts, cut off from the fortunes their faces helped generate. They learned that in the glittering world of pop spectacle, authenticity could be a dangerous liability. And as the group soared from one hit to another, the distance between their dreams of stardom and the harsh reality of exploitation grew ever wider. In this video, we peel back every layer of the legend, examine the contracts that bound them, and listen to the voices that actually shaped their sound. We'll meet the artists forced into silence, the legal battles that followed them for decades, and the bittersweet victories of those who finally spoke out. What you'll discover will challenge everything you thought you knew about disco's greatest sensation. Stay with us, because the next chapter dives into the first cracks in the facade, and the emotional fallout that would haunt Boney M long after the music stopped. The moment the spotlight dimmed and the last echo of applause faded, the reality behind the glitter became impossible to ignore. Whispers turned into urgent conversations among the group members. Why were they dancing to someone else's voice? Why had Frank Farian kept them in the dark? The initial thrill of stepping onto grand stages washed away, leaving a hollow ache where excitement once thrived. It began with quiet questions backstage, glances between Liz, Marcia, Maisie, and Bobby when the producer's name appeared on royalty statements instead of theirs. Those statements weren't just numbers, they were the proof that every performance, every smile, every hour of rehearsal hadn't translated into ownership of the music they embodied. Liz Mitchell had been the first to sense something was wrong. She remembered the rush of adrenaline the first time she heard her own live voice on Belgian television, perfectly in sync with her body's movements. But as chart positions soared, her paychecks remained flat. One afternoon, while idly thumbing through contract pages between costume fittings, her heart sank. The fine print revealed she was strictly a performer, not a recording artist. The royalties, the gold and platinum plaques, belonged entirely to Farian's company. In that instant, the glowing stage lights felt cold and unforgiving. Liz realized she was the face of success, but a stranger to its rewards. Marcia Barrett was next. A spirit as fiery as her Jamaican heritage, she'd sung reggae, inflected lines that gave songs like "No Woman, No Cry" their warm authenticity. Yet in studio logs, her voice barely registered. Farian's falsetto and baritone tracks reigned supreme. Marcia had poured her soul into the music, only to find her vocals sidelined and uncredited. When she confronted Farian with performance tapes and studio session logs, he waved it off as artistic choice. The sting of being silenced for the sake of an illusion cut deeper than any critic's review. Marcia understood then that her voice, her very gift, was secondary to the branding Farian had meticulously constructed. Maisie Williams had entered the world of Boney M with dreams of stardom. Crowned Miss Black Beautiful 2 years earlier, she radiated confidence and charm. When a talent agent whisked her away from a restaurant in Montserrat to join the group, she believed fate had smiled upon her. But her dreams turned to dust when she learned she wasn't even permitted to contribute her own vocals. Farian bluntly told her, "Your presence is the performance, your voice is not." The rejection stung like an insult to her identity. Maisie became a living doll. Her movements choreographed, her lips cinched, her spirit confined to a dancer's role. None of the recordings she sang on were her own. For Bobby Farrell, the revelation was a betrayal of epic proportions. Known for his lightning, fast spins and magnetic showmanship, he had become the public face of Boney M's thunderous male leads. But backstage, he listened helplessly to Farian's deep male baritone, his own body on stage yet empty lips when the mic was live. The cognitive dissonance, performing a voice that wasn't his, ate away at his confidence. He questioned every applause, every cheer. Was it for him, or for the hidden vocalist behind the console? The heartbreak deepened with every royalty report he wasn't on. Bobby's dreams of artistic expression curdled into a performance of someone else's creation. With each passing hit, the performers' resentment grew. They saw Farian moving through luxury cars and lavish parties, while their own bank accounts remained unremarkable. Tight contractual clauses bound them in place. No credit for studio work, no share of songwriting royalties, no path to independence. Any attempt to renegotiate or speak out was met with legal threats and fierce intimidation. Farian wielded trademark registrations and non-disclosure clauses as weapons, ensuring that the story stayed his to tell, and his alone. As news of lip syncing and financial exploitation leaked into tabloids, fans began to react. The hard followers felt betrayed. Some launched petitions demanding transparency. Others shared interviews on underground forums, revealing Farian's admissions. The online uproar reached a fever pitch when a leaked candid interview from 1978 surfaced, in which Farian casually confirmed that Bobby and Maisie had never sung on any record. That footage spread like a virus, igniting outrage among fans who once believed in the magic of Boney M concert. Attendance dipped as rumors circulated, and television appearances were marred by frowns and pointed questions. Behind the headlines, the personal toll became clear. Liz Mitchell grappled with anxiety, haunted by the question: if her voice didn't matter, what did her presence mean? Marcia Barrett endured sleepless nights, haunted by recordings where her own melodic instincts were absent. Maisie Williams questioned her worth as an artist. Bobby Farrell's joy of performing was overshadowed by crushing identity loss. Each member felt the weight of exploitation, used for image and ignored for artistry. Yet amid the turmoil, a spark of resistance ignited. Secret meetings were held in hotel hallways during tours. Whispers shared over makeup stations. The group discussed taking legal action, reclaiming their rights, demanding credits and royalties. It was a perilous plan, confronting a man who controlled their careers. But without action, their silence would remain the truth behind the legend. They realized that to reclaim their voices, they would have to risk everything: their positions in the band, their budding solo opportunities, and their public reputations. In the next section, we'll explore the explosive courtroom battles that followed, the testimony that exposed the dark underbelly of a disco empire, and the emotional reckoning that unfolded when the performers finally stood up to Frank Farian. Stay tuned, because the fight for justice would reshape the legacy of Boney M forever. The performers' quiet resolve hardened into action one crisp morning when Liz Mitchell, Marcia Barrett, Maisie Williams, and Bobby Farrell gathered in a dim hotel suite off the beaten path of a German tour stop. No longer content to dance to another man's voice while he reaped the profits, they quietly hired a lawyer known for championing artists' rights. That lawyer, sharp, relentless, unafraid of corporate power, promised them a path to reclaiming what was theirs: official credit on recordings, back royalties, and the right to perform under their own names. Farian's glossy empire trembled at the mere threat. He had built contracts as impenetrable as steel cages, complete with non-disclosure clauses, gag orders, and punishing penalties for breach. Insiders called it the art of entrapment. Yet, as invoices piled up and fans clamored for transparency, the group members realized that nothing short of a courtroom battle would expose the truth. Their unity was born from betrayal, and the stakes could not have been higher. If they lost, their careers could end in ruin. But if they won, they would shatter the facade of disco's greatest illusion and rewrite the script for generations of performers to come. When the lawsuit was filed in a Hamburg courthouse in late 1978, it felt like tossing a grenade into the disco scene. Journalists flocked to the courthouse steps, hungry for every tantalizing detail. The group's lawyer laid out the evidence: studio logs showing who sang which tracks, internal memos detailing royalty allocations, and copies of those draconian contracts that had silenced voices for so long. Farian's legal team countered with a practiced arrogance. This was standard industry practice, they argued, a creative collaboration protected by copyright law. They spun a narrative of artistry and image management, insisting that Boney M's magic lay in its entire production. Voice, choreography, and visual flair combined. In a dramatic courtroom moment, Bobby Farrell himself took the stand, tears welling as he recounted the first time he realized the voice he was performing wasn't his own. Maisie Williams followed, her quiet conviction painting a portrait of a dancer betrayed. The judge watched, impassive, as one blow-by-blow testimony after another chipped away at Farian's polished defenses. Outside the courtroom, public sentiment swayed like a pendulum. Tabloids splashed headlines: disco's dirty secret, Farian's fraud exposed. Fan clubs splintered. Some staunchly defended Farian's genius, while others peeled away in disgust. Outraged at the exploitation of beloved performers, radio DJs and music critics debated ethics and authenticity on air, turning the courtroom drama into a cultural reckoning. Underground fanzines printed full transcripts of leaked depositions, and midnight radio shows played the recorded interviews of devastated group members. In bars from Amsterdam to Atlanta, vinyl collectors held listening parties, comparing isolated vocal tracks to live performances, dissecting every nuance to see whose voice belonged to whom. The glamour of disco gave way to a raw hunger for truth. Farian's reputation, once unassailable, now courted scandal. His name was uttered with a mixture of awe and contempt. Meanwhile, the plaintiffs found an unlikely ally in union organizers, who seized on their cause to campaign for fairer compensation for all session musicians and backup singers. What began as a personal fight for recognition had grown into a broader movement, demanding structural change in the music industry. After months of testimony, evidence gathering, and legal wrangling, the landmark ruling arrived in a flurry of headlines. The court ordered Farian's company to retroactively credit Liz Mitchell and Marcia Barrett on recorded tracks, to pay substantial back royalties, and to release the other members from restrictive performance clauses. But the victory was bittersweet. The sums awarded covered only a fraction of the billions generated by Boney M over more than a decade. Farian appealed, and the case dragged on in appeals courts into the early 1980s, diluting the impact of the initial triumph. By then, the group dynamics had fractured under the stress of litigation. Trust, once their unspoken bond, had withered under months of public scrutiny. Less tangible losses began to hurt more. Liz struggled with anxiety in live performances. Marcia fought depression. Mizey slipped into self-doubt, and Bobby confronted a deep identity crisis. They had won the battle for recognition, but the scars of betrayal lingered. As each appeal court pared back the original judgment, the members realized that legal victories could not fully reclaim the joy they'd lost or erase the years spent hiding the truth. By the time Farian finally capitulated, agreeing in 1983 to a confidential settlement that granted final credits and modest financial recompense, the world of disco was already shifting. New genres emerged, tastes changed, and the sheen of the 70s gave way to 80s synth, pop, and MTV spectacles. For the original Boney M members, the triumph felt anticlimactic. They had fought for their voices and reputations, yet their moment in the spotlight had dimmed. Crowds no longer roared as they once did. The spectacle had moved on. Behind the scenes, Farian quietly rebuilt his empire, applying the lessons learned to new acts, though never again on quite the same grand stage. The core members drifted apart, pursuing solo projects that struggled to break through without the Boney M brand. Their relationships, once bound by shared dreams, now carried the weight of legal briefs and broken promises. Yet even in faded glory, the aftermath of their battle reshaped industry's standards. Record labels, shaken by the precedent, began offering more transparent contracts, at least on paper, and unions demanded clearer crediting practices. The seed planted by Liz, Marcia, Mizey, and Bobby grew into policy changes protecting backup singers and session musicians. Their courage in the face of power ensured that future generations would not have to struggle in silence. In the next section, we'll delve into the group's individual journeys. After the storm, the solo careers, the health struggles, and the quiet resilience each member displayed when the music faded and the spotlight dimmed forever. In the years after the courts finally granted their limited victories, the four original voices of Boney M found themselves navigating a world that had marched on without them. Liz Mitchell, once the powerful lead singer whose recorded highs and lows defined the group's sound, tried to chart a solo path. She released a gospel album in 1998, Let It Be, a heartfelt collection that spoke of redemption and resilience. Critics praised her vocal purity, but the album sold modestly. No longer backed by the glittering machinery of a global disco phenomenon, Liz discovered how fragile fame could be. She weathered depression, often waking in panic at night, haunted by flashbacks of contractual betrayals. Yet on stage, she projected calm determination, determined to make her voice her own. While Liz rebuilt her musical identity, Marcia Barrett fought a different battle, one for her life. Diagnosed with ovarian cancer in the early 1990s and again with breast cancer, she endured surgeries, chemotherapy, and interminable hospital stays. Yet even lying on a gurney, she sang lullabies to fellow patients, her spirit unbroken. She married Marcus James in 1984, a rock-solid partner who shielded her from the worst of the industry's cruelties. Together, they weathered every storm. In 1999, Marcia released Survival, an album whose title served as both manifesto and miracle. Sales were limited, but survivors around the world found solace in her lyrics. Each stage she took afterward was a reclaimed victory. proof that no contract clause could silence a voice forged by struggle. Across the Atlantic, Maisie Williams refused to be defined by legal entanglements. After winning her fights to perform under the Boney M name in certain territories, she launched her own touring ensemble in the mid-1990s. Despite initial setbacks, cancelled shows, confusing lineups, and ongoing threats from Farion's legal team, Maisie pressed on. She held performances in local clubs, small halls, and private events, often lip-syncing to original tracks she'd never sung on. But in those intimate settings, she began experimenting with her own material, crafting songs that danced between reggae rhythms and disco nostalgia. Her resilient performances reminded audiences that even a silhouette once forced to mimic someone else could find a genuine voice. Then, there was Bobby Farrell, the dynamic dancer whose spins and acrobatics fueled Boney M's stage magnetism. He attempted a solo career in 1987 with the single Hoppa Ho, but it flopped. As the years wore on, Bobby drifted through projects, reuniting with old members for short-lived tours, only to watch doors close and fans grow silent. Contractual traps left him penniless, debts mounted. By the late 1990s, Bobby had lost his home and was living in Amsterdam's Gasperdam neighborhood, surviving on welfare. His daughter, Zanilia, recalled a father who once dazzled international crowds, reduced to asking for small loans that never came. The man who trained for perfection in the studio now staggered under the weight of broken promises. On December 30, 2010, in a hotel room in St. Petersburg, Russia, Bobby's heart gave out. The date mirrored the death of the historical Rasputin, 94 years earlier in the same city. An eerie coincidence that sent conspiracy theorists into overdrive. Some claimed curses, others whispered about fate. Yet the official autopsy cited long-term heart disease aggravated by stress and substance struggles. Bobby died alone, in debt, with fewer than 100 in his bank account. Meanwhile, reports emerged that Frank Farion's estate was valued at over $100 million. The stark contrast between a frontman forgotten and a producer in opulent comfort sparked outrage across fan forums and social media pages. Frank Farion himself lived out his final years quietly in Miami. After a pig valve heart surgery in 2022, he joked, "I've got a good pig in me." But his health waned. By 2024, he was wheelchair-bound, estranged from former colleagues. When he passed away on January 23, 2024, obituaries noted his musical innovations and his ruthless business tactics. 2 days later, Liz Mitchell released a public statement praising the music they created together, but offered no personal memories or warmth. To many, that felt like the cold culmination of decades of broken trust. In the digital age, the story didn't end with their deaths. YouTube detectives dissected every performance clip, isolating voice tracks and amplifying courtroom audio. Viral videos contrasted Bobby's empty apartment with Farion's mansions, fueling petitions demanding royalties be redirected to surviving members and families. Hashtags like Fed Justice for Bobby and Faye Pay Liz Mitchell trended in waves. In 2025, a Change.org petition garnered over 250,000 signatures, calling on streaming platforms to adjust royalty splits retroactively. Music industry guilds took notice, launching reviews of legacy act contracts and urging labels to adopt sunset clauses that protected performers after a set period. The precedent set by Boney M's battles likewise influenced legislation in several countries. In Germany and the UK, new laws mandated clearer crediting practices for session musicians and backup singers. Record companies inserted language banning predatory, non-disclosure clauses. For a generation of performers, the ghost of Boney M bore fruit, greater transparency and an industry more accountable to artists. Yet for the original members, those reforms came too late to restore their lost prime. Now in their 70s, Liz Mitchell and Marcia Barrett continue to perform, their voices richer with lived experience. Maisie Williams tours Europe with her self-penned songs, and Bobby's memory lives on in tribute concerts and documentaries that spotlight his talent beyond the mime. Collectors hunt down rare vinyl pressings, pop culture podcasts debate the ethics of image vs. authenticity. Academic studies cite Boney M as a case study in power imbalance. The glitter and the heartbreak remain forever entangled. As we reach the final chapter of this saga, we'll explore how Boney M's story reverberates in today's music world. We'll meet modern artists navigating similar temptations of illusion, examine how social media has shifted the power dynamic between images and voices, and ask, have we really learned from the lessons of the past? Stay with us for the concluding section, where we'll uncover whether in the age of instant transparency, another Frank Farian could ever wield such control, and whether the human spirit will always find a way to reclaim its voice.